Hey guys, Hodge, Seven of Truth here. I hope you're doing well. I thought, as I said in the previous video, I'd do a bit of an intro just to share what this component is about, this video release, based on what I describe as the sanctuary state. It's a mode in which I operate and have operated for many years, and I've sort of done it innately as a reaction to all the things I've been through that just helps me endure whatever is going on and hold my space and be able to perform and function and do the healings and stuff that I do now. I just wanted to also say before you get into this that towards the end there's a bit of a break of what I was talking about relating to be fit and stuff. My phone actually shut down during it and it didn't save the recording that was after it. So this video and the previous one combined was already quite long, so I thought maybe I'll talk about the reason why I employ fitness in my psychic defense and recovery as a component that I can control in a future video. But I hope you really enjoy this. I hope you find a lot of benefit from it. It might seem pretty subtle and simple, but it's actually quite challenging and it requires a lot of discipline and investment over time to really be able to hold it. So as I've found over the years, when I hear these sort of experiences, I sort of integrate them and become better for it. So I hope you feel the same and you gain a lot from it and keep exploring. And thanks for finding me. Enjoy. So this next part is what I call the sanctuary space, and getting into the sanctuary state level in my mechanics are built on a foundation of having a sanctuary space, alright? Because that concept of reference is something you can tune into, alright? It's familiar. So this next part is what I call the sanctuary space, and getting into the sanctuary state level in my mechanics are built on a foundation of having a sanctuary space, alright? Because that concept of reference is something you can tune into, alright? It's familiar. So this is getting into some of my experiences over my life that help me appreciate these sort of things that we don't know that we do, okay? So I used to DJ in the 1990s a lot. I used to go out partying and stuff like that. I never really got into alcohol or the other stuff too much, other than to experience them and stuff, where a lot of people, what I realized, if they had problems in their life, they employed these things to give them an escape from their existence, right? So I remember one time I went to this nightclub and boyfriend of a cousin was there and he was offering me a lot of alcohol and drinks, and I'd never really gotten into alcohol in my life. I don't really drink much at all. I haven't had an alcoholic drink, I don't know, for 5-10 years. But back in those days, you did it to relate to people and stuff. So this one night, I got shit-faced, alright? So drunk, without realizing it. I was in a nightclub that was really loud music, enjoyable music, lots of people having a good time and stuff. So the environment was unfamiliar, okay? So because I hadn't really drunk much and stuff like that, I didn't know the effect on me, and because I was in a foreign environment, I didn't know how bad I was, right? And had a great night, had a lot of fun, very grateful for that guy and stuff, you know. It was nice that someone was generous to me and all that, and it was, didn't want to be rude and all that. So I was contorting to all the reality and all that sort of stuff, going along with it, and didn't know how I felt, and didn't really have a reference of how smashed I was, right? So then what happens, I come to my home, and then I was like, oh shit,
because I was in a familiar scenario, familiar surroundings that are very assumed and constant, okay, I could measure myself against the environment because I was so familiar with it, okay. So what I realized is I could sense how smashed I was, and I was really, 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 really fucked, okay. And vomiting like profusely and feeling shit for a couple of days and stuff. Swearing I'd never drink again and all that sort of stuff. What I realized is when you're in foreign environments, the default mode is not to recognize yourself because you're in them and you're integrating the variables and the senses and all that that's going on around them, and you have no foundation, all right, to what is familiar, what is normal and stuff. So without really measuring all these sort of experiences and stuff to know thyself, all right, there's a vulnerability, say on the psychic level, all right, missions, grid work and all that sort of stuff, of when you're in foreign environments, you don't know yourself because you have no frame of reference, okay. So when I came back home and I realized, it was like, shit, I was really bad, all right. It sort of taught me that you have to be careful of those sort of scenarios. If you don't know yourself, all right, you can get yourself into trouble because you don't know the effect of things. You have no reference. But over time and stuff, I realized that I didn't need familiar environment, familiar scenario to be able to measure myself, all right. And you think it's easy, it's not, all right. Trust me, it's not. It took me a lot of experience to realize that it didn't matter the environment in, I could measure myself no matter what. The variables might be unique relative to where I am compared to what I'm familiar with, but I can still maintain that sense of myself no matter what, alright? So, skipping along a few years and stuff, 1999 I started getting into the IT industry just before Y2K, and for many years I was working in one organization as an administrator. Then I outgrew that, and then I became a consultant, like an engineer that would go out to client sites and stuff like that. And the same metaphor here is IT skills and doing in a familiar environment, like an administrator level of administrating a network with like fellow colleagues and stuff like that, versus going to client sites. The difference of this reference is not your familiarities, but it's your skill set, okay? Because going into a foreign corporation and stuff, you don't really know, they're not your servers, you don't control them, they're not your client computers and all that, you don't know what people do with them, you don't know how they interact with them and who manages them and all that sort of stuff. In computers there's components that are familiar, but the arrangement can be basically infinite, and you don't know how. Every client site was unique, every person was unique, and going into those environments, okay, where you're being paid a lot of money as a consultant to fix stuff or improve stuff that the majority of people don't really have high level IT skills, okay. So from their perspective, they feel vulnerable about you ripping them off because you have power over them about your awareness, okay. And one of the best things one of my strengths was client service interaction, because what I would do, I would be able to translate the complex into and tune into the individual and talk to them at their level and explain things at their level, all right? And the clients would love me for that because I could be able to translate a lot of really good IT people, they can only work at their pace, right? Working at a slower pace is actually like stepping down gears and stuff is one of the biggest challenges of explaining the complex, because empathy isn't a thing, all right? Empathy is a variable that requires a lot more energy to invest in people and stuff, all right? And like I said earlier on, most people are running at 30-40% of life force, all right? So investing in developing the empathy muscles to interrelate with people is something that is a nice to have, not a necessity for most people. So because IT and working at a very high level and a big like security and all that sort of stuff is extremely demanding, just to be able to hold that knowledge and go into sites and stuff. When big money is involved as well, it's a huge amount of responsibility. There's a lot of pressure, and that's where I was very good. Actually delighting the client, having client relations was something I really enjoyed, okay? Building trust and rapport. Like I said, you imagine advanced IT knowledge is out there versus the norm down there. People are vulnerable, alright? Especially when money is involved, and they're in fear and all that, and they're in lack of their own abilities compared to someone that is very aware, alright? It's a variable that's very important, alright? And working in my city at the time, it's a very cliquey environment. If you did something wrong, you got a bad name and all that sort of stuff. Whereas when I went to Sydney, people didn't give a shit, alright? They just wanted outcomes and results and didn't give a shit. They didn't want to care. They didn't want to know, alright? It's very interesting. So, and that's where when I interact with people, it's not that I'm trying to sell stuff or anything like that. Everyone is a client, alright? And I build rapport and relationship and charisma and all that sort of stuff to make it feel like a relationship, which it is. But when my abilities turned on, like I've said, it became very hard to deal with, and I always operate when I'm operating in a client service sort of state of being, alright? And it's professional. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And because I've had that corporate experience and interacting with people that don't have the level of awareness that you do and stuff, I appreciate all those variables. They were a great training ground of dealing with people and stuff. I always operate in a professional level, alright? So it might seem easy, it might seem I'm mates and all that sort of stuff. I'm focused on the Galactic Special Forces level stuff, alright? And if there's a potential of interacting with someone to accelerate their development, to hopefully contribute to the maximum of their potential and stuff, that's how I've always operated, alright? So, the sanctuary space, okay? So when I would have to go out into client sites and stuff, with all this expectation, the emotions of the client, say if it was a disaster recovery and stuff and they didn't have the capabilities to solve the problem themselves, they were vulnerable because they were seeking external such as yourself to fix and help and stuff. It was vital for me to learn about that reference, okay? Like I said, about being in unfamiliar environments and being perceptive, which I realized I have actually been, but didn't really, like I said, that validation that I sort of have offered to people is because I really realized that I never had any concept that I was doing what I was doing, and all the variables were affecting me and they didn't affect other people because I had an edge, which were my misaligned abilities that when I went through the trauma in Sydney with my ex, it focused them all together and aligned, and that's where things got really hectic for me because targeting and all that sort of stuff, right? So I was undercover because I was unfocused and living the 3D life and stuff like that. So when I would go into the client networks, the variables I realized were unfamiliar, foreign, wasn't my situation, didn't know the boundaries and all that sort of stuff. The thing that I realized that I needed to maintain was my abilities, what I knew about myself, what I knew I could do no matter what. What it came down to is all the variables were unique, like a network and stuff, but there were common familiar things no matter what, like say a server, clients, network device, printers, and all that sort of stuff. What most businesses are trying to do is the same, right? And how they went about it was unique, and you could recognize those components and stuff. And then when you trusted yourself, you knew what they wanted to achieve, so you brought it about. Okay, so in getting to the sanctuary space sort of thing, and sanctuary state, when I went to client sites, I had to perform. All right, they were paying a lot of money and stuff like that. So if I doubt, if I had lack, if I hadn't done the homework and hadn't invested in the understandings and stuff and doing all the exams and stuff, having experience of fixing all these things, all right, I would go in like a flapping sail in the wind, right? But because I had the sanctuary state of knowing myself, right, knowing my abilities, familiarity of the components all involved and stuff, I could tune into that no matter what, all the craziness and chaos going on of all those external variables, and perform, okay, and deliver the expectations of the client. All right, so that what I'm trying to imbue on you is the experiences I learned to integrate all these components, because that sanctuary state, no matter what, is very foundational to how I operate, okay? And it didn't come just as an answer out there. I did meditation from 2010 to 2013 or 14 with my teacher, Rose Penn, who was 99 years old when I met her, right? In a group of, veteran meditation masters that have done it for 30, 40 years, and they're in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, so they were very level and very focused. And me coming in was like, I caught onto the wheel of how fast they were going, and I was brought along very quick, but I didn't have that meditation training until very late, after all this sort of stuff, right? But the sanctuary state, for me, in this metaphor, is how to hold yourself no matter what's going on around you, okay? And it came about as a byproduct of having a sanctuary space, okay? Having an environment where you can disarm, all right? Where you can feel safe, where you can let your guard down, where you can be yourself, you can observe yourself. And so having a sanctuary space, okay, it means the subtleties that are off you can recognize, and then you can focus on them. Why are they that way? Or you can get help or whatever and stuff. But a lot of people you see in the world, there's a lot of people in trouble, there's a lot of people homeless and stuff like that. It's very difficult to do high level work if you don't have a reference point, alright, and a sanctuary space to be able to disarm and stuff like that. A lot of you've probably gone through money troubles like me, and you haven't had the stability as a foundation, We're all caught up in the 3D 5 sense of existing in this reality, okay? I have to acknowledge that. What I've learnt, because I had, say, that example in the 1990s, and the skydiving reference, and then going into client sites, this is how you can employ time, no matter what. And this is what I do, okay, is I sort of never go out of those states ever, alright? It's like meditation, why would you leave it? I found I found it fascinating when people go, want to have a gap from their life. Like I said about the alcohol and the drugs in the clubbing scenes and stuff. What I noticed is, why would you want to go leave your life because you need meditation and stuff to have a break from it, and then go back to how crazy it was after? Why would you want to just have a gap in your craziness to have peace, and then allow yourself to go back into craziness? Hey guys, just had a bit of interruption. Getting back into the flow. What I recognized about having glimpses of these things, such as I said, meditation and stuff, was, why would you leave your hectic life, just have a bit of an experience, to then go back to the hectic life, not integrate anything? Okay, what I did, alright, I found these as new foundational components to add to my repertoire of who I was and am. Okay, that makes sense. So if I show you that diagram again, the infinite potential diagram, so this is one I've shown in the past, and I described the foundation as the skydiving familiarity with the variable of Earth, Mother, that's below us, that we don't really recognize. It's a subconscious acceptance, default mode, if you like. And then when you accept it as a variable that's out there, that you can employ it and see it as the next level, because then the concept of references might be the foundation for that next level. So what I then described was going out and partying and having a lot of alcohol, and the effect of the alcohol on my state of being, which I had no reference of familiarity with. Okay, so then when I went home, I went to that familiar state, something that was a set of coordinates that I could tune into, that allowed me to subtract from my normal state how I was, right, and recognize how off my normal state I was, and then the integration of dealing with the outcome of the effect of on my consciousness and body the alcohol had, right? And then as another reference, understanding and integrating the sanctuary space, right, from the metaphor of the IT engineer, was the sanctuary space. In that metaphor was my understandings and talents of technologies and software related to information technology and the networks are going into unfamiliar environments. Okay, the sanctuary state was my knowingness of what I knew, and it wasn't also just everything I knew. The tools available to actually find out and expand my knowingness relative to the unfamiliar environment and a problem that might be before me, such as an IT problem. All right. And I'll just offer a bit about my IT development and stuff. I did mention I started just before Y2K. There was really massive hyped up thing about going from 1999 to 2000, and I got employed just before that, which I felt very lucky because I went through the experience of that. There was a lot of fear and things are going to fail and all that sort of shit. So it was a bit of a narrative experience of the influences over society and fear and how it has an effect, because there was huge spending prior to that. All right, a really ridiculous amount of spending in the IT of businesses and stuff when it wasn't really needed, but it was based on fear and uncertainty. So financially benefiting the craziness, if that makes sense. So the market went crazy, and then there was this huge drop after for many years. Obviously September 11 happened, 2011 and stuff like that, but there was a IT technology abyss for many years because of the extreme coordinated boom and then the coordinated lack of needing sort of technology after that. So during that time it was very, very difficult. And from 99, mid 99, I remember my first job I got was on the Wednesday at midnight before my first day of my job. I went to Phantom Menace. I saw a midnight showing and it was Star Wars Phantom Menace, because my mate used to work at the cinema and we got tickets, and it was, yeah, a really amazing time in my life. For 4.5 years I worked in that organization before I became an engineer, and I went through a real period of not having any awareness of IT. I was very lucky to get a job, but going from being studying to being in the trenches in a corporation, it was a very, very big learning curve, and it took me many years to go from lack and what I didn't know and developing ways how to deal with problems that came up. So what I did is, because I realized I had a lack in my ability to solve problems and stuff, I created problems to actually test myself and develop the problem solving framework and how to deal with situations that I didn't understand. Okay, and I went through a period of being super proactive on creating issues to being prepared for that issue if it came up. And there's infinite number of problems that could come up, but it was very, very demanding to actually sort of create every friggin' problem, alright? So I was ready for it if it came up, because I didn't believe in myself to be able to solve it if it wasn't familiar. But then I got to a point where I realized, hey, I'm actually pretty good. I've done a lot of work. I did all the study. I'd read books and create a network at home and all that sort of stuff. I got to a point where instead of being proactive reactionary, I could be passive reactionary, if that makes sense. So what I learned is to say search Google. Right? Google in 2004 was much, much better than what it is now, because it's geared to make money. The search algorithms are very much geared to who pays them to be at the top of the list, but it was very pure environment back then. It was very authentic, unbiased and stuff, and searching for problems was very easy. What it came down to is learning the abilities to search, because the reality that I got a grasp on was that the scenario and the problem that I was experiencing, should it come up, I realized that it's probably been experienced by other people in the world. Not only that, it's probably experienced by a lot of people in the world, because IT was so foundational to businesses and stuff. And what I realized is the internet is an amazing resource for information and stuff, and what it really came down to was the ability to search the enormous library out there, and using the nouns and doing words and stuff like that in explicit searches that brought about their relation to information out there and the scenario I was in. So I developed those skill sets and stuff, and it became an enormous ally to solving problems, because I realized I didn't have to go through it. I just had to have the skill set to actually tap into, to react to the scenario in front of me. So that's where I'm sort of metaphorically using my IT development and stuff as a sanctuary state of existence in operating in unfamiliar environments, okay? Because for me, the way I'm sharing all this and what I've been through is, it's not about bragging, it's about just trying to survive my life, right? And as a problem solver, I was trying to reverse engineer what was going on so I could be passive to all the events going on, and the 3D 5 cents didn't add up, right? And that's where I went through the event with my ex, and I've sort of shared in detail in other places, or components which are in other videos which I invite you to explore. If I defined myself by the 3D 5 cents, I couldn't understand what was going on, alright? So I had to be courageous and go into the unknown and add that as a component of what was going on, and then when I did that, it everything became obvious. And if I bring up that image again, the infinite potential image, say this reference is just trying to have stability in your life, right? Just having a foundation, having the resources to survive, eat food and stuff, having allies and stuff. They weren't really there, okay? I didn't understand why people were reacting how they were, right? Because potentially I had a gap that I was needing other people to be, say, in a tribe or whatever, and allies that I could trust and stuff. And what it came down to was my metaphor of close encounters, of going through and doing all the good work and stuff, was like getting to that final result, okay? But all this came about by me reacting to the crises and troubles in my life, alright? Just trying to have a reference to stability in it, okay? What I've found in my life, alright? Just trying to create stability and what everyone else has had to give me the foundation to have normality gets to this level, and then all the missions reveal themselves, alright? So the constant effort to improve and create better life has resulted in those missions, because of the craziness that I've had to really reverse engineer, which I'm trying to offer in these multidimensional method to the 3D madness releases that I'm offering. The byproduct with the mission, okay? It wasn't like a target, I want to be a good worker and all that sort of stuff. No. I feel it was the big concept to really understand is, once you get the reference of familiarity and solidness in the foundational components to give you a platform to get to the next level, those things are waiting in the next level of potentials that you are a match to, because you've invested so much into mastering this present level, okay? So what I'm sort of getting to relative to all that I've offered in this, okay, is, if I just go back to the other image that I've shown about the bubble, I showed you this in the last video. And what this is, imagine that's the sanctuary state, right? In your sanctuary space where you're familiar, and all the components and variables around you you're controlling, so you can have a reference of how you are. Imagine it, when I was out in the nightclubs and stuff like that, having alcohol, the unfamiliar creates opportunities for influence, alright? Absolutely. I have no doubt those environments were absolutely toxic on some level and absolutely incredible beyond society on others, alright? So what I'm sort of suggesting here is the missions and stuff that come up, unless you have a solid sanctuary state level in yourself of mastery, when the big things kick in and all the pressure's on, alright, if I just go back to the other image, so maybe up here you got a mission that's going to do a lot of big stuff, alright, and you're being predicted down here, okay, as an opportunity to hit, alright, and instead of going up you get smashed, and then down here then you get compounded that instead of existing up this level, it takes you years to recover, such as me with bankruptcy. One of the key things in Australia with bankruptcy is you lose your passport, alright? So travel was restricted. So, for instance, I went to America after Andrew's event. I went up to Vancouver Island and did good work with amazing lady Mandy Lynn Golden Eagle, alright? And I call that Turtle Island work, because if you listen to part 6 of Galactic Special Forces with Annette O'Toole and a future part 7, they're about getting my crystals to people and doing good work related to what I'm saying is the Dreamtime grid, alright? Okay, So you wonder why I've been smashed so much and stuff on a level that very few can comprehend. You think about how core the dream time is on the planet Earth at the moment, alright? Criminality, okay, to me is the basis of, say, the metaphor of Australia. When the convicts were sent here, they were massively haunted and traumatized, harboring enormous number of demons and all that sort of negative entities, sort of stuff. So as soon as they stepped foot on the earth here, those entities went after the dream time, alright? And the law structure of the grid of the world, alright, from my understanding, is that the judges control the negative dream time, alright, to create criminality. So that's why I say the indigenous are targeted and stuff like that, alright? The dream time is under control on a negative level, and that's where law of the land is imposed on us, right? So that's where I've been working to undo that stuff, and that's why I've been smashed. And very few people can even comprehend that, because as soon as I get into it, they get triggered, and then they go off into tangents and all that sort of stuff. And going back to the other diagram, me holding my sanctuary state, I can observe the influences and stuff, and then the compromise, and then they get turned against you and all that sort of stuff. And so going over to America and doing that stuff with Mandy, it was in foreign realities. Like, America is a vastly different reality to Australia. Alright, the travel, it took me 28 hours to get there, 38 hours to get back. Crazy. And I didn't really sleep for 7 days, and I didn't really eat for 7 days. So it was very extreme, because I was in a very, very heightened state. If I hadn't mastered all the sanctuary state and sanctuary space and the references of those, alright, so say when I was over there and tired and stuff, what I could tune back into is my familiar home, right? And this is the key, is when you have a reference, alright, if I go back to the image, so if I bring this image up again, when you have a reference of that familiarity, what you can do through time is tune back into it and anchor it as a foundational aspect to your being, okay? And that's what I do. To say that metaphor of going out and knowing the difference between normal and alcoholic, not alcoholic, but influenced by alcohol and stuff, I can tune into the state with that familiar reference of what I feel is normal as a reference to what isn't. To say if you're getting influenced by entities and stuff, you can tune in. A lot of people don't really have the ability to recognize it. Alright, if I go back to the other image, when you've created a gap and the influence comes in, then you're existing with that perspective that you don't know, because most people don't have the ability to observe themselves that they are different than what they were. Alright? That's where you need to know thyself and know when, by your emotional state, gaps are created. And when you're in a unfamiliar surroundings, like a different country, America, they drive on the opposite side of the road from Australia, for instance. I remember I was in Seattle, and it was quite bizarre to me, because it felt like the polar opposite to Sydney, because it's quite, if you walk through the city and stuff, there's a lot of hills and it's not flat, alright, which is much like what Sydney was. Sydney isn't very flat, it's quite undulating and stuff like that, but it was quite bizarre, because it felt like the opposite, like looking in a mirror and seeing the opposite. It was like living in the opposite, because Seattle was near water and had a harbour and stuff, and it was just like an alternate universe to me, alright? And being in that unfamiliar with different money and different culture and stuff, you go into that scenario, just like me going to a different client site, it can be very vulnerable, right? You don't know what you rely on until you're in unfamiliar scenarios. So over the years, I've deliberately gone into unfamiliar environments to test myself, right? Like, say if I'm tired, I walk. I get really run down, because like I said, 7 days of 28 to 38 hours travel and unfamiliar food and all that sort of stuff, it's extremely vulnerable. I didn't have much money at the time. A really interesting story, I remember I was very close to not being able to afford the flight over to America, and I got a return ticket for $1,032 to the US. I was working in that demonic portal location and stuff in the big shopping center, I remember I was very on the edge of being able to actually afford the ticket. And I remember on one shift I went to lunch and I had to go to the shop and get some stuff and that. And I remember I lost my wallet, alright? So I lost my credit card. And I was like, I have to buy the ticket today. It was like the last day. And if I didn't, then usually what happens when times and dates for flights get close is the airlines put the prices up, and I was going to probably not be able to afford it. So I remember I lost my wallet and I was like, shit. It was ironic because when do you ever lose your wallet? Alright, it was really interesting. I remember I went to a concierge there, and after I realized I lost it, and I realized someone actually handed my wallet in, alright, with all the money and all that sort of stuff. So it was really interesting because it was like battleground. If I go back to the other drawing, in the future I was going to do a major thing, alright, and it was totally observable, and there was this battle of light and dark going on around me, okay, and influences and all that sort of stuff. So I know, for instance, being clumsy and all that sort of stuff, so losing a wallet can be an indicator of influence and stuff, and because they know that vulnerability is there, so you can get hit, alright. So I knew there was a lot going on and not being told, and but I didn't know what was the potential and all that until it unfolded, because most of my missions you never get any warning, alright? It's like if you really read the write-ups that I did in the earlier Galactic Special Forces, 24/7 call, alright? No warning, and you have to be ready at a moment's notice. So things like the sanctuary state and sanctuary space and references of your familiarity and what's not are all sort of variables you must be deploying in your algorithm of self-understanding and self-awareness all the time to know what isn't you and what is. And because when you know thyself, you can sense the variances of those around you and when they're getting influenced, because honestly, very few people I know that have the awareness of the subtleties, let alone the courage to be vulnerable and accept that they might be stuff going on, right? Very few people do that, even in the very advanced spiritual community and stuff. So you listen to the recordings, I'm very aware of what's going on, alright? You know? And I'm aware of the impact and all that sort of stuff, and I'm aware of what's going on with those around me and the predictability of their patterns and stuff like that, alright? So these are just some of the components that I hope you can add to the repertoire of who you are. These are all, like, I started doing Galactic Special Forces level of stuff in early 2014, mid 2014, so I had to have these as a foundation component to operate at that level and be a component, because one of the things, my blood, RH negative, I'm a portal creator, so I'm an energy anchor, so I'm like a bit like a multidimensional USB charger. So when you hear those missions and stuff, they're in my field, and I've got this image. I'm in my sanctuary state, no matter what. It doesn't matter what's going on around me, and people are actually my bubble, and I'm protecting them from that stuff. Right? I know it. Okay. So yeah, I hope. This has been quite long, and it's a bit long, and it's taken me a while to get to the sanctuary state and sanctuary space. I hope you see them as components that are potential for you in this world that we're living in. And a lot of you out there, if you're listening to a lot of people you might meet, think, oh yeah, I got that under control, no problem at all. Bullshit. Alright? This stuff isn't easy. This is very hard. And I encourage you to realize that if you think you've got this under control, put yourself into test, create hardships, see how you react. Like I said, I know one of my vulnerabilities is jet lag, what I call jet lag. So if I get out of the routine with sleep, there might be a day or two that it takes to recalibrate after that. And say when I talked about going to America, I was in this zone of fatigue and heightened state, and yeah, there were variables that happened. Like I remember trying to book a flight back from where I was to Seattle to catch my plane. I went to San Francisco and then back to Australia, and then from Sydney to Adelaide. Just as I was trying to get on, the internet went down, and when I came back, the flights from the local airport were fully booked, and it meant I had to get to another airport, which was 2 hour drive. And so grateful for Mandy and a friend that drove me down to Sydney, Vancouver Island, I think it was, which is ironic. You know, like I said, the mirror and opposite. There's many cities in Canada that same names as Australia and stuff, and so it was a really epic way to get back, and going through all the airports, especially American and international. It's very, 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 very tough. Right. And yeah, going through customs and stuff like that, you have to be on the ball. And I was going for 38 hours straight home, right, after doing massive grid work. So when you are heightened, you can be vulnerable because you can be open. You don't have grounding and all that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't have been over there unless I was on top of my game. That was 5 years ago doing that. Yeah, and doing all the Galactic Special Forces stuff, I'm setting them as a sort of bar of the potentials that we have, all right? And all I've done is I've gone through my life, tried to endure all the crap, and all this stuff's been revealed, and I'm the only one that can sort of do it, all right, with these other people and stuff. What I'm saying is, it's not bragging, it's just a byproduct of mastery in certain things, and I'm offering you the components that I've learned that hopefully you can see as variables that you can tune into, measure yourself against, be very, very, like, set the bar very hard and high on yourself, and like be honest, all right? Because trust me, if you get around someone like me and you've skipped steps and you haven't done the thoroughness, it's going to be exposed like this drawing. And then you're going to get compromised, and then you're going to put more responsibility on someone like me. And then I'm battling to survive in it myself, alright? That's why I say special forces, the metaphor is because you've got to be master of yourself no matter what. I don't give a shit what's going on with you. I'm not going to be responsible for you and all that. You be on top of your game and in mastery of your life. Because what happens when the heat is on, the pressure and the gaps, the crack of the dam get exposed, alright? And that can undermine the whole thing with everyone. That's why you get into spiritual groups, people in gatherings and stuff, and there's always fallouts, alright? Because people haven't practiced hard enough, they haven't been thorough enough and removed all their issues and stuff to, you know, be ready for the game, so to speak. So I encourage a bit like gym work and developing the muscles and testing yourself and going into unfamiliar cities or locations. And it's a bit tough in the world now, but just devise scenarios that will test you, alright? Yeah, another metaphor I wanted to share that I didn't get into is also about, say, the grid work and unfamiliar environments and stuff like that. In Australia, a bit of a metaphor is there's a lot of pride about owning homes and stuff and having familiar environments and stuff, and that's where I talk about the reference of familiarity and stuff like that. Another thing with the travel and the grid and stuff like that is a lot of people want to contort the environment to accommodate them. Okay, so say with house, a lot of people have water purification and pure taps and all those sort of things to create the better water in the home environment, which is awesome if you've got the resources to do it and stuff. Highly recommend. But you also have to realize when you're, say, like I said, I traveled over to America and stuff, I'm not going to go to a familiar environment where I can control the variables. Okay, you have to adapt to the scenario around you and make the best of it no matter what. Alright, and if you're codependent on the comforts and they're not there, you can create gaps for yourself, right? So just recognize that, okay? When you're away, you can't control the environment, so the only thing you can control is your state, alright? That's why I'm calling it a sanctuary state. So if you've got over in America and stuff, you gotta, like, say for that instance, I could tune back into the reference of skydiving in unfamiliar environment. All right, don't need to be in fear of it. Back with my IT exploration and stuff like that, of knowing how to operate no matter what the environment and stuff like that, and then just being on top of your game no matter what. So, like I said, the missions and stuff at 24/7, you never get any. I've never really got any warning for the main stuff. All right, maybe you can plan or whatever, but if I've had to learn to master my thoughts. If I'm brewing a mission, don't even think it, because that moment of thought, conception, and potential is, you can get targeted. That happened to me in Lionsgate 2019. All right, before I was looking to go to Europe. All right, so yeah, the sanctuary space and sanctuary state and referencing, employing these things. These are how you can use time as an ally. Tune back into those states, recognize them, be very fortified with them and stuff, and see what happens. Those sort of variables. Be honest, brutally honest and tough with yourself, and don't leave gaps, alright? Because maybe you're the one we've been waiting for, alright? Up here. These potentials that are waiting for you once you master them through time and stuff. I just want to share a few things. If you can see, I've got a bruise on the inside of my arm. I have no idea how that I just woke up with that. Right? So I felt like there's been a bit of a crunch around me and stuff, and I retreated a bit from interaction and stuff. And I don't know what's been going on, but I think I've been doing missions outside time and things like that. Like what used to happen to me, for many years, and I'd speak to Andrew and stuff, and Sean, is that I'd have a clear hair growing out of my third eye. All right, like I'd go walking from my bedroom around to my toilet, and I'd come back. I remember one morning distinctly, and it was a bit earlier than, it was 11:18 in the morning. I went to my toilet and I came back. It was 12:34. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I went for a walk around there and back. It's about 15 meters, and I went to the toilet, which only takes a few minutes. I came back, and I was over an hour lost. All right. And then I went to my bathroom. I saw the hair, and I spoke to Sean Bond, and he said, "Oh, you got unicorn DNA." And it's like, because the unicorn horn is related to time. All right. They could travel through time. Okay. So yeah, I know I've done missions, and you get like, come back, and it's a bit like Avatar, and you're feeling like totally friggin' exhausted and stuff. So I've been feeling that way, and started really getting into fitness and all that sort of stuff, and instinctively, because being super fit and strong, I've learnt over the years is, if I go back to this image, being tough on myself, I realized in that IT metaphor of being reaction to the problem is being brutally honest with myself. I don't know all the angles that I might have, right? So being influenced is a constant, right? When you understand that, if I go back to the other image, if you're courageous enough to accept that we're totally observable and our vulnerabilities are totally exposed and open, we don't know what we have, right? If I go back to the other image, through time, where this ever-present constant is just waiting for us to have low points and then smash us, okay? The norm is you don't know if you're being influenced, right? So just to finish this off, thank you for finding me. Thank you for having the courage to challenge yourself and your place in the world and the chorus of society that doesn't see these things as variables that can comprehend, let alone reject you for probably exploring them. See, that resistance is sort of confirmation, and just humbly accept the enormity of having awareness in this world, in the universe. All right, it's an incredible achievement to be here. It's tough, it's brutal, it's horrible. It's been a lot worse in the past, all right, than this era, this life and stuff. Just appreciate the achievement of gaining awareness in an unawareness environment, which Earth is. It's a significant achievement, and appreciate it for the challenge it is, right? I just say, for simple perspective of what I'm aware of and what I've been across with all the people I've dealt with in the past, this is the hardest gig in the universe, right? So just realize when it is its hardest, alright? You don't have to crumble. You can be like coal that's been pressurized and be the diamond that you are, okay? Just allow it to, the reality constructs to be harder, alright? As hard as it can be, but it's not going to have a limit on you. Doesn't matter what happens to anyone else and stuff. And I trust Earth has my back no matter what goes on. I go through my ups and downs like everyone else and stuff, and challenges and all that. I'm not exception to them. I'm probably in it more than most, and I just don't talk about it and share it. And when I do share about it, it's quite challenging, but keep going. Employ these things, see what happens in your life. This is a cool thing, is when you share stuff like this, you get karma credits for the bonus and what everyone else does. So thank you for exploring me, thank you for finding me, thank you for the courage of all this, and hang in there, guys. It's an endurance game, and everything's on our side. You got to see the condensing and limiting is that in fear, not of our limit. Alright, so keep pushing. Don't accommodate people around you. Change. Let people leave your life, and hold yourself as the apex of your worth and your self-respect and all that stuff. And hang in there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.